You enter the woods with certain expectations of the experience. There are probabilities that may be met. The smell of damp earth, warmed, sweetened pine, the sound of leaves beneath your boots, maybe a quick flicker of a squirrel, distant chirping of birds. It's nice. We go to disconnect, to breathe, to feed our craving for a little quiet and stillness. There is always a chance things can go differently. The weather can turn. We may encounter an animal that we are wholly unprepared for. We may lose the trail. But whenever we voluntarily enter the forest, we do so with a level of certainty about how it will likely go, and hopefully how relaxed and in tune we will feel following our jaunt through the wilderness. Even should unexpected events occur, we can still rely on our human ability to make logical choices and strategic moves. There's still a certain level of control and understanding, until there isn't. When your well-defined concepts of reality and how the world operates is put to the test, control and understanding go right out the window. You are suddenly shaken and left to wonder if your senses have betrayed you, if you can trust your own eyes. Welcome back to the Paranorm Girl Podcast. I am your host, Kristen. On this installment of Beasts of the Backwoods, we are discussing creatures that should not exist, yet people claim to see them. Before we get into it, we have had some developments on our Wampus Cat mystery. As I told you guys last time, I ran into some issues verifying the origin of the Wampus Cat legend, namely confirming the widely shared, widely believed Cherokee connection. Now, my main concern at the beginning of all of this was disrespect via misattribution. I messaged the Cherokee National Research Center to ask if they perhaps had additional information or could confirm this connection via their archive of stories and traditional folklore. A couple of days following my initial message, I received a reply from someone with a 31-year association with the Cherokee Nation and is a senior genealogist at the research center who had no familiarity whatsoever with the folklore of a Wampus Cat. They suggested I connect with an associate of theirs in cultural resources, and I did. I received a response from them the day following the posting of our last episode. They, too, had no familiarity with any Wampus Cat myth and had only heard the term in association with the Atoka High School Wampus Cats out of Oklahoma. Go Cats! They were kind enough to forward my message onto a few others, and someone from the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma responded. This lovely person had heard of the Wampus Cat before, but said that they would be interested in learning more of its origin and wished me well in my continued search. So, no connection to Choctaw folklore either, it would seem. A few days following this, it just keeps going, I received one final follow-up by the CNRC from a coordinator in their archives. Following a look into their archives and special collections, they were unable to find anything referencing this creature. This alone semi-confirms my initial suspicion of misattribution. However, they would suggest that I connect directly with the Eastern Band of Cherokee out of North Carolina in the off chance that this legend is not necessarily Cherokee-wide lore, but more localized in Appalachian Cherokee specific stories. Which, if it does wind up being the case, terrific. I will finally understand where that attribution is coming from. So that is where we currently sit. I have messaged them And we will see if we get a response. We may not, and that is totally okay. But if someone reaches out, it will be very interesting to see if this may be the answer to our month-long mystery. No matter what the answer is, we will finally put this side quest to bed. I am beyond grateful to the folks who took time out to respond and help me zero in on this. And if they should hear this, wado, yakoke, and thank you. All right, let's talk about seeing some things that should not exist. We are going to kick it all off with the not deer. The not deer, or not a deer, initially looks like a regular old white-tailed deer, until it don't. Witnesses report that jarring moment when they realize there's something not quite right. They describe features like eyes that face forward like a predator, eyes that look undeniably human, so again, like a predator, joints that bend in the wrong direction, body movements that are a little too stiff, too jerky, almost robotic, certainly unnatural, bodies that are a little too big. Witnesses also speak of its behavior seeming too deliberate and intentional rather than instinctual, like there's a level of intelligence, higher intelligence that is present in the creature that just does not belong. It is also said to make very unnatural sounds. A particularly unnerving feature, some have reported, is its ability to walk around on its hind legs, like a bipedal creature. And in addition to all of these, individual accounts may also report strange, one-off, odd physical features of the animal. These encounters swiftly shift from surprise to fight or flight. Witnesses become deeply unsettled to viscerally fearful. And just imagine it, seeing something that looks like a deer as your brain registers something fundamentally wrong with it, registers the imposter. And they say uncanny valley refers to that unsettled, sinking feeling that you get when you see something that looks human but isn't. I had this whole diatribe about the uncanny valley response that I ended up cutting from our last episode for time. I might end up uploading it to Patreon in the coming weeks, but to put it simply, I think the uncanny valley is a wider spread phenomenon than we initially thought. It crosses species lines. It does. And it doesn't necessarily apply only to the human face. And I think the not deer is a good case in point. Looks like a deer. Something registers in our brain's recognition centers. Oh, gee, that's not a deer. As Our Lady of the Skies, Saint American Airlines, put it so eloquently, that motherfucker right there is not real. She said it, not me. I wonder whatever happened to her. I hope she's okay. I hope she did not get got. That is what I hope. The logical conclusion to these reports of people seeing something that they might term a not deer is that the deer in question is sick. Chronic wasting disease, which has also been called zombie deer disease, is a neurological malady where the brain tissue of the animal slowly is destroyed. It is fatal. It is contagious. It does not only affect deer, as it is also seen in elk and moose. I didn't know that. Anyone encounter any not elk? Are there any not a moose stories out there? Genuinely asking. I just hadn't come across any, and that would be so interesting to know. Symptoms of CWD include excessive drooling, aimless and even agitated movements, stumbling, walking in circles. It is quite awful to see. It's awful. CWD also leads to severe weight loss. in the animal. CWD is a fairly good conclusion to have with many of these cases, but as we can see, some of these symptoms, they don't quite add up to witness descriptions of behaviors and traits in their not deer encounter stories. Just like the mimic, the identifying term of not deer is a recent creation, though it would seem accounts of not deer go way back, according to researcher and previous editor of Fate magazine, Jerry Clark, who wrote about a not deer account that was from 1951 from a woman who claimed to see a deer with long hair, a bushy tail, and pads for feet standing out in her field. Highly strange, but could very well be the case that whatever it was that lady saw was genuinely not a deer because it was something else, a different animal altogether. The not deer phenomenon is not solely the possession of Appalachian folklore, but it is fairly prevalent in the region. When folks there have these encounters, the interpretation many have arrived at that is far more unnerving than CWD as a cause is that it's not diseased at all. It's a disguise. That it's some kind of shapeshifter or mimic attempting to replicate the creature and doing so quite imperfectly. Next up is a creature that is very real, lives and breathes and is in existence at this very moment, just not in Appalachia. Or so officials continue to insist. This one rides the fine line of cryptozoology, but we will cover it briefly because people claim to see it when that is considered impossible. Black Panthers have been reportedly seen throughout southern Appalachia throughout the 20th and into the 21st centuries. According to wildlife officials, there has never been a population of a wild black feline of the large variety, as has been reported, and sightings are chalked up to fabrication or misidentification. Fabrication, sure. That's a given explanation when it comes to the types of things that we talk about on this show. Now, misidentification is really interesting to me. People think that people are either seeing a black canine, either a large dog or wild wolf, and they're just not seeing it clearly for what it is. And I suppose that's fair, especially if the sighting occurred at a distance. But I've also heard that people are misidentifying very large house cats to bobcats that are affected with melanism, which is a rare condition in the bobcat population but has been scientifically documented. This explanation is strange to me. The Black Panther that is being described is as big as your run-of-the-mill cougar. Fully grown adult male cougars average 150 pounds, females between 90 and 110. And the descriptions also include similar traits as the cougars, such as their muscular build and very long, thin tails. When we consider the average domestic cat typically weighs less than 20 pounds, seems an unlikely confusion, even considering the rarity of an especially big, heavy domestic cat. They still fall short of the threshold. The heaviest domestic cat ever on record came in at 47 pounds, and that was due to overfeeding. Not in shape at all. Had to be carried around in a wheelbarrow. The domestic cat, in my mind, is just, it's entirely off the table. Bobcats affected by melanism, I'd have to argue, are as well. Not only do they sport that stubby nubbins of a tail, not only are melanistic bobcats exceptionally rare, but average weight for bobcats falls between 15 to 35 pounds. And it does happen that they grow larger than that, but that is incredibly uncommon. Some have suggested the Black Panther might be a melanistic cougar. And that explanation comes with issues of its own. First, no melanistic cougar has ever been captured, killed, or officially documented. Second, officials claim there is no population of cougars in certain areas of Appalachia. Once upon a time, they were pretty common, but the settlers put a stop to that. The last documented kill of one during the mad rush to end their existence in the region purportedly took place at various times near the turn of the 20th century, and that's depending on the states that were involved. And you know what? That seemed to be the end of that. But that being said, along with these Black Panther sightings, following that final documented member of the Appalachian cougar population, hundreds of reports of sightings, encounters, and evidence of their continued presence have persisted in the years since. So much so that wildlife officials brought the animal out of retirement for the region just enough to properly declare the eastern cougar extinct in 2011. But they've been seen since. Still, they're persistent little buggers. Could these felines that are being spotted be previously captive, recently released animals? Sure, it's a possibility. Could they be drifting in from other areas? That is a possibility as well. Arkansas has seen an increase in their own cougar sightings since their attempted annihilation of them in 1920. Could they be just passing into Arkansas and even more east than that, winding up in lower Appalachia? It's not impossible. Doesn't quite account for the number of reported sightings, hundreds alone in West Virginia. But sure, maybe. And if that's the case, I wonder if that might be why Black Panthers are also spotted there as well. Long-standing local lore from Montgomery County, Arkansas, tells the story of Emily Stacy, who was out collecting water from her well with her children right at dusk. She noticed a reflection of large eyes nearby and quickly ushered her kids indoors. As the family sat down for dinner, there was a ruckus on her front porch. Sounded like some kind of animal trying to get in through the door. Emily loaded her musket, aimed it right at the door, and proceeded to fire through it until all was quiet. All was well until the following morning, when upon her exit, she tripped over the dead body of what is described as a very large black mountain lion. There's no official date for the story, but we can make an educated guess that it would have taken place early to mid-1800s with both the use of a well on her property, but also the use of a musket. If this long-standing story can be believed, it's an answer that doesn't really solve anything. Was the animal a black mountain lion, as they claim? Well, scientifically speaking, that's not a thing. Was it another species? Was it a Black Panther? Officially speaking, that's not a thing in America. Maybe it was an escaped exotic pet. Who knows? Modern reports persist for both the cougar and the Black Panther, where there should be none. The cougar is more easily explainable, and I suspect their stubborn presence in Appalachia will be confirmed officially before too long, and they will be brought back out of retirement. The Black Panther, though, that's a weird one. But all it's going to take is for someone to officially recognize its presence, to kick it out of the fabrication and misidentification list and into the land of reality for the good people of Appalachia. Hey, if it is good enough for the Kraken, I mean The giant squid that was totally real the entire time, dismissed by non-sailors for centuries, and finally photographed but a mere 20 years ago. Then perhaps it's good enough for these enigmatic kitties. Now, I would definitely take seeing a large, wild cat in an area that they should not exist over seeing this next creature that should not exist. To begin our examination of it, though, I am going to tell you about a creature that most definitely does not exist, called the Rake. The Rake was born on 4chan 21 years ago when an anonymous user began a thread inviting others to join them in creating a new monster from scratch. Features and traits began pouring in. 6 feet tall, humanoid, pale grayish skin, 2 large eyes on front of head, no nose, mouth that is slightly visible then opens on a hinge, hundreds of dull but not blunt teeth, eats meat, genitals don't matter, attacks when approached, but mostly stares. It was revised and perfected a lot in its early phases. 6 feet tall, but crouches. 2 slightly larger than human eyes. Small mouth that opens on hinge down to neckline. Widens its eyes when provoked. Unknown origin. And still humanoid, pale grayish skin. The following year, blogger Brian Somerville would post one of the earliest stories, if not the earliest story, of the creature, launching off its mythology into the webosphere. According to his post, first-hand accounts describing it had purportedly existed since the 1100s, but were officially documented starting in 1691. Most documented encounters with the creature in the time since had been destroyed, mysteriously vanished. The story and mythology spread, and by 2010, it had made its way to all major ports of entry to wider pop culture via sites like Reddit, Creepypasta, the Unexplained Mysteries website, and so on. Personal modern stories and accounts began appearing online regularly, cementing the veracity and living lore of the creature. And at the end of 2010, a Louisiana news station reported on a photo that had been sent in by an anonymous hunter who claimed he had discovered that his trail cam had been demolished. But upon checking the SIM card, lo and behold, he might have caught the culprit. One single frozen frame of a stretched, emaciated, pale humanoid creature, eyes nothing but eye shine, crawling towards the camera. No doubt moments before it was destroyed. Many who saw this report and photo made the automatic assumption this was what had been described over the previous years. Mainstream media actually took this evidence kind of seriously at first. Any doubt in some viewers' minds evaporated. This proved it wasn't just some scary story. It was real. This was the Rake. But it wasn't. This image was actually released by the creators of a game called Resistance 3, and the creature that is depicted was supposed to represent a character in the game called a Grim. But that is still a misconception of that image, and it's still a widely associated picture of the Rake, a creature that, again, had only been created a few years prior to that. How to make a real monster in just 5 years. Someone copyright that. Now, why am I talking about the Rake when we can clearly see it's a creation of the internet? We know where and when it was born. We know its originating lore that propelled it into pop culture's collective consciousness. I am doing so to educate you guys a little on a common hurdle when it comes to paranormal research and keeping our facts straight, especially when they begin to commingle with straight-up verifiable fiction. I wanted to do this side-by-side comparison of two very similar entities, one being clear invention and the other still up for debate. Because two things can be true. There is a creature that often gets misconstrued with the rake that has been seen in Appalachia numerous times. And out of this area, there is one encounter story specifically that makes it exceedingly difficult for me to discount this creature's existence.
Pender County 911, what's the address of your emergency?
I'm driving on 210. I just crossed the Black River, and I thought I saw a guy standing on the side of the road bleeding.
Okay, where are you at, sir?
I'm on 210. I just crossed the Black River. I'm heading towards 53 East. I just passed Patriots Watch.
Okay, so you're over near Morse Creek?
Yes.
Okay. And did you saw a man standing on the side of the road?
Yes, ma'am, and it looked like he was bleeding because when I drove by, I had my high beams on, and all I could see was just some streaks of red going down his body, starting at his head.
Okay, hold on. I'm trying to get exactly where you're at. Okay.
I'm kind of in the middle of the woods at the moment.
Yes, sir. I'm familiar with the area.
What the fuck?
What was that, sir?
That's not human! That's not human!
Sir, are you okay, sir?
There's something in the bed of my truck!
Okay, what's in the road?
No, it's not in the road, it's in my truck! In the bed!
There's something in the bed of your truck?
Yes, ma'am, I just turned on my bed lights for my truck and there's something in my bed.
Okay, so when you say something, what do you mean?
I just knocked it off of the bed of my truck and went over my roof.
Okay, what was it?
I don't know.
Like a turkey, a deer?
No.
Turkeys are pretty
big. I don't know what the hell that was. That wasn't a turkey because I was driving 50 miles an hour.
Okay.
The turkey doesn't hit that hard, and it was not covered in feathers at all.
Okay, all right, sir. What do you think it was?
I have no idea what the hell that was. And it just scared the absolute hell out of me, and I just knocked it off of my truck when I slammed on the brake.
I'm sure you did, sir. I mean, I would be scared, too. I'm just trying to think what...
On July 31st, 2021, North Carolina's Pender County 911 dispatch took a call from a young man traveling on Highway 210 near the Moores Creek battlefield. It was pitch dark just before 11 p.m. when he saw something that would compel him to place the call. What appeared to be a 30-something-year-old man in what looked like a Civil War uniform, standing on the side of the road bleeding profusely from a head wound. Strange thing to see. I often put myself in the scenario of the witness, and if it had been me, I would have assumed that my eyes were not deceiving me, and as odd as the sight was, it very well could have been a reenactor doing some kind of late-night reenactment or reenactment practice for the battlefield, had somehow lost his way in the dark, found himself in the forest, fallen, and gotten severely hurt. That in itself would be a very strange and random situation, but not out of the realm of possibility, right? All right, back to our witness. Again, it was very dark. And at this moment, he had been traveling between 55 to 60 miles per hour. So he couldn't be certain that he saw what he saw. But in case this was indeed someone needing emergency services, he dialed 911 to report it. As you hear in the part of the original call that I just played for you, he is not on the line with dispatch long before something very unexpected happens. Carolina Case Files, they're over on YouTube, link in the notes below. They get credit for bringing this story to the public's attention late last year. They unearthed this original call, interviewed local police that were involved, and they tracked down and interviewed the young man who made the call. His identity has been kept anonymous, and Rusty at Carolina Case Files only identifies him as T. Now, thanks to them, we get to hear his recounting of what happened that evening and a description of what it was that he saw while he was on this call. I have listened to this recording probably 50 times by this point, and it doesn't seem to matter. Every time I listen to it, when he screams, my skin just crawls. It is such just a raw, automatic, primal response that this guy had. Now, according to his recounting of the incident, moments following his telling dispatch about the bleeding man, and he's keeping an eye out for somewhere that he can pull over, he hears a massive bang in the back of his truck as his vehicle bounces down. And he compared the sudden dip of the truck to pulling a heavy trailer and hitting a pothole. And that's a pretty distinct visual. He could hear banging and scratching on his roof. In the recording, we hear him question what that was. He asks, "What the hell?" He turns on his bed light and looks in the rearview mirror and sees a snow-white face pressed against the rear window, looking inside the cab. He describes the face having shallow, sunken eyes, no nose, and no ears. That it looked as if you would put skin over a human skull and stretched it. We then hear him scream, "That's not human," twice, and the acceleration of his engine. In his interview, he admits he didn't even remember screaming, "That's not human," until he listened back to the recording. He just remembers being terrified. His speedometer hit 80 when he slammed on the brakes. He describes a scrawny, long body flying over the roof, over the hood, and rolling in a ball on the pavement. He's still moving, and he swerves to the left, going around it as this thing quickly stands up. Using his truck's height to estimate, the witness says this thing easily made 7 feet tall. It had abnormally long legs, abnormally long arms, as if you took a normal human body and stretched it, starting with the limbs. Those are his words. He floors the gas pedal. Just as he passed it, he looks in his mirror and sees it take off across the road and into the woods. People have come to call these creatures by many names, including the Rake. And here is your trigger warning, your heads up. If you don't want to hear two names that has been given to this creature, two in particular, starts with an S, starts with a W, fast forward 30 seconds, hit that button. I have heard Fleshgate. I've heard Flesh Pedestrian. I have also heard some call it Skinwalker and Wendigo. Now, I am not going to do that. Not only have both of these terms been stolen and warped by para-horror trends and ideas, but I think it's pretty clear these two concepts are completely different things and far more spiritually based compared to what I am talking about right now, which, based on the different encounter stories that I've come across, seems to be a physically based something. I am simply going to refer to this as a pale crawler. A very similarly described creature comes from the Red River Gorge in Kentucky. A woman, her husband, and a friend were on a night hike on one of the trails. They were on their return trip back down when, in the beams of their headlamps, they all witnessed a kneeling, crouching, pale, whitish-grayish figure who turned to look at them before standing to face them. This storyteller described it looking like a human, but too big and thin, with gray skin that resembled dolphin skin. It had 2 sunken pits for eyes on the front of its face and no other distinguishable facial features. Its head was large and long. It had no hair, and she said its arms hung low and its hands, situated near its knees, were long. Fully standing, she estimated it to be close to 9 feet tall. The trio begins to sprint back to their car, as you would, as the creature pivoted to get from where it was onto the trail. And the witness says as they continued running, they knew it was in pursuit. And as their feet hit the gravel area near their car, they could hear it crashing through the forest. They made it back to their car. They took off. They got out of there. And later, they would individually make notes in their phones as to what they had seen and what happened. Upon comparing notes, the 3 witness stories matched. Our 911 caller is not the only story that suggests that there is a pale crawler and other weird activity in the Piedmont area. Locals speak to sightings of lights, ghostly figures, and other strange creatures in this area that go back years. Another account took place sometime around 2015-2016 when the witness was 12, and I found this story on Lon Strickler's Phantoms and Monsters blog. It's a great resource. I highly recommend it. Now, the witness in this story had been chilling with her friend outside in a hammock. That's where it starts. It was during summer break, so the girls were up late. The witness says they were just up talking, and it was close to midnight. Her friend's face suddenly went pale, staring past her, and was frozen with fear. The witness turned to see what she was looking at, and between the separation of a forked tree, she could see a pale, white, human-like face with sunken eyes. It was silent and just watching them. Could have been a severely dehydrated or cold wacko peeped Tom and 2 young girls from the woods. I don't know. They didn't seem to think so, because they both scrambled to get inside and then would spend the rest of the night trying to make sense of whatever it was they had just seen. Crawlers have been seen Appalachian-wide. Direct your own research efforts, again, to Phantoms and Monsters or to the Crawler Sighting subreddit page for more stories. Use your best discretion, but if you're into that thing, go there. They do seem to hang out in mountainous, rural, forested areas, so it does make sense that they are often seen in the Appalachian region. Theories range all over the place about these things. They're interdimensional, they're a governmental science project gone wrong, they're aliens, they're from inner Earth, they live in caves, and so on. I don't know. But I know that they are seen all over the place, including Appalachia, and they should not exist. the 911 caller would wind up pulling off at the first place that he saw lights, a gas station parking lot. And he would be joined by various officials, EMS, state troopers, parks and wildlife. Nobody knew who should have taken this call. Nobody knew, which area this was for, who would best suit the call. So they all showed up. And they would search for any indication of this creature and find no trace. They would search for the bloodied man and find no trace. Did he hallucinate the entire thing? I don't think so. I believe him. We hear the loud banging in the audio. Distinct scratches were found on the roof of his truck that looked like a clawed hand had dug in as it slid back. Perhaps as the truck accelerated and it tried to hang on. Officials have confirmed the call to be real. They confirmed that the caller was legitimately distraught, and they do suspect that he encountered something. They just don't know what. Creepy, you guys. All right, let's move on to another humanoid, our final creature for today, that people are seeing in Appalachia that should not exist. The Glimmer Man. If you are into Glimmer Man accounts, take your butt right over to Mr. Strickler's blog. Holy cow. I ended up having to stop my scrolling. There were so many personal stories that have been submitted to him. The Glimmer Man is a newer concept to the pop para-culture landscape. It's only been in recent years that it's really been looked at and studied. Mr. Strickler and the fellas over at Expanded Perspectives have just released what sounds like a very thorough dive into this entity and a documentation of its stories. This book was literally just released just like last week, so I have not gotten it yet. I shall. The Glimmer Man itself as an entity, it's not new. One of the earliest accounts that has been documented in modern times comes out of Appalachia, actually, and took place in 1967. Numerous Glimmer Man sighting reports occurred decades preceding movies like Hollow Man and the Predator franchise that contains a character, the Predator, that makes an appearance in many folk stories due to its similarity to whatever it was that they saw. Liquefied glass, morphing saran wrap, a rippling, a shimmering, a glitching of atmosphere are just some of the descriptors that I've come across. Encounters with the Glimmer Man often take place in the woods and other rural areas. There's lots of stories out of the Appalachian region. There have been stories also of encounters taking place inside of bedrooms, though those do seem a bit on the rarer side. These experiencers often describe seeing a man-shaped, anomalous, and transparent shape. I don't know how to describe it. Many describe seeing the entity as just an outline of a silhouette with nothing inside of it. They sometimes don't realize that there is anything there at first until it moves, and then the witnesses see distortion in the surrounding and the background scenery. Or they might only see it following a sudden and stark shift in their emotional states. Many describe dread. One that I read described suddenly feeling pain-free, happy, and excited as a child again, just out of nowhere. Others describe this strange feeling of calm, but it is a sudden shift in their emotions. Some stories include the sense from the witness that there is an intelligence and an observation that is taking place, that is being exuded by the entity. There's not a whole lot to go on as to what these things could be. Speculations have ranged from alien, interdimensional, undiscovered biological humanoid creature. Some have suggested it may just be military or like super confidential cloaking technology. Rosemary Ellen Guiley once speculated them to be jinn based on her research. And she was one heck of a smart researcher, and based on the argument that she made, they do fit the description for a lot of the stories. Maybe they're jinn. Could be the case. I did a little bit of digging into the current state of cloaking technology. I am not going to sit here and tell you that I understood one lick of it or what metamaterial is, but it sounds like invisibility is a current work in progress. We got some ways to go. There have been some successes under the right conditions and with the right light waves being directed at it. But from all that I have read and also don't understand, we're just nowhere close to the complete predator level cloaking ability of what the Glimmerman is. We're just not. And even if we want to be conspiratorial about it and say, oh, the military has had this technology for years. I mean, they've had the level of what people are describing for 60 years? 60? That long? Maybe. So, since I cannot wow you with my vast understanding of cloaking science and how they are bending electromagnetic waves around whole-ass objects, let's take a look at some of the stories instead. There's a really interesting account from Phantoms and Monsters that took place back in the early 90s in Antioch, Tennessee. This witness was outside letting his dog do their business when all of a sudden he got this really strong feeling of being watched, and it just would not go away. He said he heard rustling in the forest, and he starts panning, and he's panning up into the trees, where he zeroes in on something shaped like a man, completely translucent, looking like the predator, just crouching up there in the tippy tops. And he's staring at it, and it's hard to know why he did what he did next, but he says he let go of his leash and he just started running, just full tilt towards this thing. And as he watched it, it took off, jumping from treetop to treetop as he continued run chasing it. And he said it was fast and stayed well ahead of him. The witness finally had a realization of, like, what the hell do I think I'm doing here? And he stops, and the thing stops. He says he could tell that it turned to look back at him before continuing off along the treetops, disappearing deeper into the forest. And he mentions at the end of his story that he'd never told anyone before because he didn't want others to think he was crazy. Where have we heard that before, you guys? That sentiment is paranormal wide. I always wonder how many stories are still out there because people might be too afraid to tell them. I found this next one on the Paranormal Encounters subreddit, and it's kind of fun. The encounter took place 1 year ago. The witness had taken their e-bike off trail into the woods to just find an alone spot and to get away. And they sat down and started playing around on their phone. And they're playing a game while music is playing out of the speaker. And at first, the music he was playing is hard rock, hard metal stuff. A couple of minutes after sitting there, a couple of rocks get thrown at him. Not hitting him, but landing close enough that he notices. And he doesn't clarify in his story if he thought this was like other kids playing around or if he suspected something squatchy. Maybe they do that, but he ignores them. A minute later, a couple more rocks lands right near him. He continues to ignore whatever it is, and he goes to change the music channel on his phone to something a bit more chill, and then he goes back to playing his game. Out of his peripheral, he starts seeing movement, and he would look, and nothing was there. So he continues playing on his phone. Music is going, seeing this movement, looks, nothing is there. About 15 minutes pass, and not in response to anything. He just happens to look to his right, and he sees what he describes as the predator from the movie, a misty vapor standing about 5.5 to 6 feet tall, clearly swaying its body and bobbing its head to the music. He says he acknowledged it verbally, and it didn't disappear. It just kept dancing. He said rather than dread, a feeling of calm came over him as he continued watching it. Reddit Scout's honor. He claims the story is true. All right, last one. In 1980, shortly after moving to Summit Point, West Virginia, two brothers and their mother began experiencing weird activity in and around their home, perpetrated by an unseen presence. Belongings went missing, their trailer shook violently, and they would hear a strange animalistic roar throughout their home. They also witnessed a round craft hovering above their place. On one occasion, one of the brothers witnessed apples flying from trees and could make out what looked like something or someone leaping from the branches. The climax of the story, of the activity, occurred when one of the brothers was on a hunting trip and said he audibly heard a voice from a nearby invisible presence telling him it could have killed him easily all along, but hadn't, because he was no challenge. We are butting up against poltergeist and alien phenomena here, but I had to get a really strange one in there before we wrap it up. So, lots of variety with the Glimmerman phenomenon. Additional details to stuff in here at the end that are included in other accounts have them making a clicking noise. They include the nearby presence of UFOs, which we just heard that, and electrical disturbances, missing time and disorientation in witnesses. In numerous stories, once the entity has been seen, they realize that they have been spotted and will either freeze, quickly retreat, or vanish altogether. And children, oddly enough, play a major role in a lot of these sightings. And there you go. Cryptids and creatures of Appalachia that should not exist, but people are seeing them anyway. Which is redundant to say. I understand this. All cryptids that people are seeing should not exist. I realize that. But you know what? I got a clear plan in place for how Beasts of the Backwoods is going to play out. Good people, let me cook. All right? Black stickmen almost made their way into today's show. What a weird phenomenon. It's a bit too widespread and worldly to make sense for an episode, dedicated to Appalachian creatures. So they are currently sitting on the cutting room floor right now. But dudes, about to be 42 over here, I had never heard of the Black Stickman phenomenon before. It was so exciting to be introduced to a brand new spooky concept, and I just wanted to share that with you guys. That's all. And I guess I kind of just did. If you enjoyed today's show, if you learned about a creature or entity that you had never heard of before, or you just want to make my day, leave the show a rating and review on your listening platform of choice. I sure appreciate the love and support. Other easy ways to support are by following on social at Paranorm Girl Pod to stay up to date with episode announcements and show updates. If you are catching this on YouTube, support the work by liking the video, dropping a comment below, and subbing to the channel. Patreon is also a hell of a way to support what I am doing over here. For just a couple bucks a month, you get early access to episodes. You are privy to exciting developments first, and you receive exclusive video updates and stories from moi. I tell my patrons things I don't tell other people, and they love it. They love my particular brand of crazy. Or they don't, and they're just too afraid to leave. Either way, you can have that too. You can have all of that. Head over to patreon.com/Paranorm Girl Pod and check it out. Pick the tier that is right for you. All patrons, no matter the tier, also get a shout out on the program when they join. And today's shout out goes to Heath, who recently became a member of my higher education tier. Thank you so much for joining and supporting this crazy educational journey, Heath. It has been really, really cool getting to know you and getting to work with you on some super secret ghosty business. You rock, and I sincerely appreciate you. Later this year, you will be able to catch Paranorm Girl over on Paranormal FM. Paranormal FM is a 24-hour, around-the-clock, paranormal-centered radio app. I have gotten first looks at it, and it is going to be glorious. Currently, we are on the lookout for just a few more beta listeners before we roll out the final version. If 24 hours of non-stop, weird, strange, unusual, ghostly, cryptid content sounds like it is right up your alley, you can submit right now to become one of the app's earliest users. And that is really exciting, dudes. Find the submission form over at pfm.onl/join. Catch me live with Beer, Booze, and Boogeymen this Thursday. The boys and I will be telling your stories and taking your calls to discuss your creepiest encounters with strangers. Now, we will be joined by a special guest. Dave Spinks is the name. If you're wondering if you've heard that name somewhere before, you have. He is all over your TV if you enjoy haunting and creepy programming like Travel Channel's Ghost Nation and Paranormal 911, History's The Unexplained, Discovery Channel's Expedition X, and a lot more of the same, guys. Join the B3 crew and Mr. Spinks for Stranger Danger. The stream kicks off 8 p.m. Central, Thursday, March 5th. That is going to be a wrap for now. Thank you guys for tuning in once again. Next time, brace yourselves. It's about to get hairy. Until then, stay safe, keep the nightlight on, and sleep with one eye open.